Alright, it's time for the Star Wars movie that unified the masses and everyone loved equally. Right? Right? Hello? Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi, is the second in the sequel trilogy of films and follows the continued adventures of Rey, Finn, and Poe, and once again, a few returning favorites. This is probably the most divisive Star Wars movie ever made. On one side, you have fans that love the new direction that Rian Johnson takes the franchise. And on the other side, you have fans that absolutely hate the decisions that their beloved characters are making. Not a lot of middle ground with this movie. You find that fans either love it or hate it. Being a Star Wars fan myself, what did I think? Well, it's different, that's for sure. But is it good or is it bad? Well, let's find out. The story of The Last Jedi is a good bit smaller on the spectacle side of things than the previous entries in the saga. The vast majority of the movie is the Resistance running from the First Order. It's almost like an extended car chase scene in space, but like really slow. There's other things that happen. Some people leave the chase and go to some other planets and things and have some stuff to do, but the basic arc of the movie is the Resistance running low on fuel trying to get away from the First Order. Now, at the same time as all of that going on, picking up from the end of The Force Awakens, we have Rey arriving at the island that Luke Skywalker's been hanging out on all these years. This part of the movie does end up being very reminiscent of The Empire Strikes Back with Luke and Yoda on Dagobah. Old Jedi Master training extremely powerful Padawan out in the middle of nowhere. We even get the whole exploring her dark side, just like Luke did in the cave during Empire. This part of the film, while cool because we finally get to see Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker again, and we do explore some themes here that are interesting, it does drag on a bit though. It's not too long, but it does get to a point where it's just a hair too long on that island. They should have shaved off just a few minutes. Back at our extended slowest car chase scene ever though, things are a little less interesting. It's not a total bore fest or anything, but the vast majority of it is who should and should not have information about what they're doing and what their maneuvers are going to be and what their plans are overall to get away from the First Order. It kind of just drags on a little bit longer than you'd like. Now, I will say the payoff to all of that is one of the best scenes in the whole entire movie, but more on that in a minute. Now, besides the end of the movie where everybody comes together in one place, the other main place that we visit during all of this is a planet called Cantabite. Cantabite is a casino planet or some shit like that. Two of our characters have to go to this planet and find a guy who can do a thing. They go there, they find him, and in the process they also find this slave trade thing going on and also some animal cruelty. And of course, when you've got slaves and animals, you've got to, free the animals because fuck the slaves. This part of the movie gets a little heavy-handed with its message. There are message movies out there and, those movies are fine. That's what they're there for. But Star Wars has never been a message movie, and I really don't like that they've started being a message movie now. Granted, this part of the movie isn't really long, but it's there, and it is long enough, and it is really heavy-handed. There's another part to this, though, that could have actually been interesting, and that's the slave side of things. As stated before, slaves in this part of the galaxy is just a thing. There's adult slaves, kid slaves, middle-aged slaves, there's just slaves all over the place. But we also see that some of these slaves are force-sensitive, and a big part of this movie is about being the spark that ignites the flame of the Resistance. And I think that's what they wanted to explore in later movies, was these slaves rising up and taking their independence back. Now, this could have been a neat angle to explore within the universe. It's not really explored in this movie, but you get the idea that the whole idea is going to be expanded upon in later entries. Yeah, we'll see about that in episode 9. My point is that while the Cantabite scenes do catch a lot of flack in this movie, and I get it because the whole heavy-handed message part of it is really out of place, the other aspect of those scenes setting up these slave characters and what they may become later on in the franchise was actually a pretty neat idea that I wouldn't have minded seeing expanded upon at some point. Can we talk about the Haldo maneuver real quick? I'm going to try and talk about this without spoiling it as much as possible because it is definitely one of the best parts of the movie, but I guess you could say that this part might be some minor spoilers. I'm not going to say anything outright, but the more clever of you might be able to discern what it is I'm talking about here. So how is it that nobody in the Star Wars universe has thought about this Haldo maneuver up to this point? I mean, granted, I never thought about it up until this point either, but I don't live there. I mean, this would have made a lot of big things that have happened in this universe up to this point a lot easier to deal with. 2 Death Stars and a Starkiller base, and nobody's thought about doing this? Probably would have made those situations a lot easier. Just saying, I can't be the only one that's thinking that. The end of this movie is probably the best part of it. And no, not because that's when it ends. The last 20 or 30 minutes is really fun and exciting, and you get some great moments between some of our favorite characters. The Luke and Leia scene, while yeah, it is very powerful within this franchise's universe, takes on all new meaning and means so much more due to the untimely death of Carrie Fisher right before the film release. This small little scene is very touching and affecting on more levels than one. What we also get in the end is the part we've been waiting for 2 movies, which is Luke Skywalker coming back to be the badass that he is. And he absolutely, totally delivers, kinda. The fight between Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren is pretty damn cool. And the angle that it takes, the thing that's going on here that you don't realize until after the fight, is pretty interesting and cool as well. Though due to this thing, you never get that total payoff in this battle that you're looking for. Luke comes out hard in the beginning of this scene and looks like an absolute bad motherfucker. But due to some of the things that they're doing here in this scene and in the movie as a whole, he never really gets to become or show that he's that badass that we really want to see. I'm trying not to spoil anything here for the few of you that haven't seen the movie, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. Now this does lead into one of the more bold decisions the movie makes. The effects or repercussions of this battle on the franchise left a bad taste in some people's mouths. And while I didn't hate the decision that they made that happened at the end of this movie, I didn't really love the way that it happened. It seemed a little pointless to me. I mean, I get the point. I know why it happened and what the person was doing and what they were giving up so that everyone else could, you know, get away and do their thing. But the way that it happened, it kind of took away from it. It didn't mean as much at the end of the movie as I would have liked it to. It didn't ruin the movie for me or anything, but it was just one more of those bold decisions on top of a bunch of other bold decisions that they made here. The performances here are pretty good, and they are more in line with The Force Awakens than, say, the prequels. But they are missing that little bit of something that The Force Awakens and the original trilogy had. It still seems like everybody's having fun here, but not quite as much fun as those movies. There's also a few weird moments of comedy here that don't quite land. Now, Star Wars has always had a comedic side to it, but the comedy here doesn't always land. Some of it seems a bit too modern, if you will. It's like comedy of nowadays. Star Wars has never really had comedy that really was part of our world. It was always part of the Star Wars world. That's one way that it kind of became timeless. But here there's some gags and jokes that just don't seem like they're part of the Star Wars world. They seem like they're part of our world. Like in the beginning, there's a joke that's more or less about bad cell phone reception. I mean, admittedly, the joke's kind of funny when it happens, but it just doesn't seem like Star Wars. And I don't know if gags like that are really going to stand the test of time like the other ones have in the previous movies. That, the performances, and some of the other little things throughout the movie is how you can really tell that someone else took over the reins here. I mean, it still feels like Star Wars for the most part, but it does feel different from The Force Awakens, which I think is what really got under a lot of people's skin. This is a very different Star Wars movie, but that's okay. While I don't totally agree with every decision they made within this movie, I do applaud them for trying to do something different. I mean, at this point, we're 8 movies into this franchise, rolling on 40 years. If they gave us just more of the same, people would have probably complained about that, saying it was nothing original. It was just the same old, same old. So if you're saying that you want something original, you want something different, yet within this universe, you have to be prepared for them to make changes, and some of those changes you might not be 100% okay with. But that does not mean that the whole experience has to be ruined. And that's where I think the divide on The Last Jedi mainly rests. The people that were really looking for some change in Star Wars to keep it fresh, that love this movie, and then the people that really love the original so much that they just don't want any change. They want everything to stay the same. And they hate this movie. I get it. There's arguments to both sides. Me, myself, like I said, while I don't agree with all the decisions they made, I would prefer something to stay more fresh and move forward instead of staying stagnant and ending up getting boring. But that's my opinion, and who the fuck am I? Now, while in my opinion, there were some missteps in this movie, there were some things they got really right. It was great to see Luke Skywalker on screen again, though this is old curmudgeon Luke. And Mark Hamill does a great job as a grumpy old man who gives no fucks about anything. He was a joy to watch every minute he was on screen. Somebody else who was great on screen again was the amazing Kylo Ren. As with The Force Awakens, Ren is still the most interesting character in this movie. And Adam Driver does a fantastic job portraying Ren as a bit more confident this time around, yet still battling with himself on the inside. This is probably the best looking from a cinematography standpoint Star Wars movie to date. I mean, all the Star Wars movies look pretty good, but this one, some of the shots, the angles, just how everything's set up looks amazing. Some of these things, if you pause them in the right moment, could be like a painting on your wall. They're beautiful. Guys, at the end of the day, The Last Jedi is not as bad as some would lead you to believe. And it's not as great as others would lead you to believe. It rests somewhere in the middle. It's not the best Star Wars movie, and it's not the worst. It is a fun, entertaining ride, but it does make some bold decisions and changes some things up a bit. I do applaud it for trying this, but this tonal change halfway through a trilogy does seem a bit off. And it's not a deal breaker, but it does bring its quality down quite a bit from The Force Awakens. I do think that it's worth a watch. I just don't know if you're gonna want to rewatch this one, making it worth a rent. This is not a bad movie, and honestly, by itself, it'd probably be fine. But launching off of The Force Awakens, it just seems a bit too different. Still though, it's worth a watch at least once, and as long as you're not too critical of it, you'll have a good time with it for the night. So there it is, guys, my review of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, may the Force be with you, and I'll see you guys next time.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it.
That's the Force.
Really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
with
I've
you.
never felt any... Ow!
Like I said, this movie's not bad, but there is one aspect of it that I really just couldn't stand, and that's those fucking bird, chicken, Furby things that they added in clearly just to sell some toys. The movie like focuses on them more times than it should, and they have absolutely no relevance whatsoever to the plot, story, or anything at all. Get that shit the fuck out of my Star Wars movie. Damn it, man. What's next? Come on!